My blood ran cold the second I heard my disabled daughter Lily scream. I rushed outside only to find myself face to face with a nightmare. HO. Karen was lifting my 7-year-old into our backyard tree. "She's ruining the view with those robot legs," she spat, oblivious that I'm the assistant commissioner in charge of HOA rules. She had no idea how much she'd come to regret this act of cruelty. Before you plunge into this spine-tingling tale, hit the like button, leave a comment saying where you are watching from, and subscribe for further jaw-dropping stories of sadistic, caring cruelty. "Mommy! Daddy! Help!" Her screams cut through the quietness of our peaceful suburb like a knife. I was halfway through taking a call from the mayor, working on an urgent city problem, when Lily's blood-curdling cries shattered the silence. All else became irrelevant. I rushed outside. What I discovered continues to haunt me. There, suspended from the old oak in our front yard, was my daughter, only 7 years old. Lily's tiny body hung helplessly, her prosthetic legs awkwardly sticking out under her. Her cheeks were stained with tears, and her small hands struggled against the ropes tied around her waist. Standing under her was Veronica Miller, our HOA president. A smug, nearly satisfied smile covered her face. "Mrs. Miller, what are you doing? Let my daughter go," I shouted, running towards them. Veronica didn't bat an eye. "Teaching her a lesson about keeping up appearances," she said with frosty detachment. "Those metal legs of hers are an eyesore, and she's been sitting out in the front yard where everyone can see. That breaks Article 7, about preserving the visual harmony of the neighborhood." I was stunned, frozen. Her prosthetic legs she'd struggled to get used to, the ones she'd gotten scarcely 6 months ago after losing both of them, were now being turned against her. As a reason for this heinous crime, those legs, those little courageous legs Lily received after the car accident that took her mother away, were now being branded an eyesore by this callous woman. "Get her down, now!" My tone was low but strong as I got out my phone to call for assistance. "Not until you sign this contract," Veronica snapped, waving a printed paper. "It says you'll keep her either indoors or in the backyard. I already had 3 homeowners complain. They don't want that destroying their nice evening walks." Lily was sobbing more now, holding the rope tightly. I understood, appalled, that she had deceived her, said it was some kind of special swing game. My sweet, trusting little girl had taken her word for it. I seethed with fury. "Do you have any idea who I am?" I asked, trying to sound calm. She laughed. "Yeah, some new single dad who apparently doesn't have a clue about how things get done in Oak Ridge Estates. I've been managing this HOA for 15 years. I'm not going to let our standards drop because you can't keep your personal life together." I remained silent. I just concentrated on untying Lily, carefully setting her down. My hands shook, but not with fear, with rage. At that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't say anything to her. Not yet. I wouldn't share the fact that I'm Michael Donovan, the newly named Assistant Commissioner of Housing Regulations for the whole state, that I have complete jurisdiction over each and every HOA in our area, that I can initiate investigations, bring sanctions, and swiftly take action against abuse of power. Number she'd learn it the hard way. That evening, I enveloped Lily in my arms as she cried, her small body drained from the trauma and the betrayal. Her small fingers traced the scar tissue on her skin where it met the frigid rim of her prosthetic legs. "Daddy, why won't she like my robot legs?" she whispered. She whispered, "I thought they were cool." Mommy would have thought so too. And with that, my heart broke once more. Since the accident, Lily had demonstrated nothing but bravery. Her physical therapist had told her to pretend her prosthetic legs were super strong robot legs. Something exciting, something hers. She had totally taken to that, plastering them with colorful stickers in the shape of butterflies and rainbows. "Your legs are awesome, sweetheart. Just like you," I whispered and kissed her forehead. "Mrs. Miller's the one with the problem, not you, and I assure her she won't ever hurt you again." I waited for Lily to fall asleep before I slipped back to my home office. There I pulled out the file I had put together on Veronica Miller, the head of the HOA. Before I moved to Oak Ridge Estates, I had done my research. I was already familiar with the increasing complaints regarding this specific HOA, but I deliberately selected this location. I wanted to see the dysfunction firsthand. I just never thought that my own child would be one of its victims. I spent the whole night scrolling through all the decisions and transcripts Veronica had signed off on the last 5 years. At sunrise, I had a fat file stuffed with abuses. Everything from illegal issuance of fines to selective harassment of disabled and elderly homeowners. 3 days later, I attended my first HOA meeting. Veronica proudly stood in the front of the community center, sermonizing the crowd on neat hedges and manicured grass. Then I entered, in with Lily at my side. The room came to a standstill. All eyes shifted to my daughter, her prosthetic limbs proudly in sight, now sported by yet more rainbow stickers, stars, hearts, and smiley faces. Post our discussion, she wanted everyone to see them. She refused to hide. "Mr. Donovan," Veronica said, her tone laced with poorly concealed tension. "With all due respect," Veronica said, her voice laced with disdain, "this meeting is for adults only. And after our recent exchange, I'd assumed you'd be more discreet about showcasing your daughter's condition." Gasps echoed throughout the room. One elderly woman even brought her hand to her mouth, visibly stunned. "In fact," I stated, speaking loud enough to project down the quiet hallway, "I am here in my official capacity as the state's Assistant Commissioner of Housing Regulations." Veronica blanched in a moment. "For the last few days, I have been conducting an official review of this HOA's activities. And let me be unequivocal, what I discovered is incredibly disturbing. Infractions bad enough to support not only instant dissolution of the board, but possible criminal indictment." Whispers spread through the crowd like a wave. I opened my folder calmly and started reciting the offenses. Illegal fines, discretionary enforcement of regulations, discrimination against protected classes, such as seniors and the disabled, fiscal imbalances, and, most recently, child endangerment. A voice from the back shouted out, bewildered, "Wait, what child endangerment?" I didn't blink. 3 days ago, I told them, my voice firm, Mrs. Miller bound up my disabled daughter, who is 7 years old, and hung her from a tree in our backyard. She wouldn't let her down until I signed a contract promising to keep my daughter out of public view. Her reason, I let the silence speak. Because, I went on, her prosthetic legs were, quote, an eyesore. The room erupted in outrage. Up until now, I hadn't told anyone what had happened. I'd wanted to handle it in a proper manner, through legal means, but it was time the truth came out. Veronica's voice trembled as she struggled to justify herself. "That's outrageous. I was only doing what I thought was right, enforcing our community standards. The girl was breaking—" "She's a child, Veronica," I cut in sharply. "A 7-year-old who lost her mother and both her legs in a horrific accident. And all she's done is try to live, with courage you clearly can't comprehend. Her mother and her legs in a terrible accident. And her name is Lily." The room sat in stunned silence until an older gentleman slowly rose from his seat. "My grandson lost his arm fighting," he stated, voice constricted with feeling. "He now has a prosthetic. So tell me, Veronica, would he not be welcome to come visit his own grandfather here?" Another voice called out from the rear, a woman's. "My mother's in a wheelchair. Are you saying that's a violation too?" Then it started, a flood of voices. One by one, the residents started telling their stories. Stories of threats, of intimidation, of fines imposed on them for having the wrong flowers, or their blinds up the wrong way. One family had even been forced out of the community when their teenage son was diagnosed with cancer and couldn't maintain the yard. Veronica attempted to speak, tried to shout above the burgeoning unrest, but it was much too late. The dam had burst. "I am putting this HOA board into immediate suspension," I announced, my voice firm and unflappable. "A complete investigation starts tomorrow. All recent fines are put on hold. An interim committee will be established to rewrite this covenant and bring it into accordance with state law and simple human decency." The audience erupted into applause, not boisterous or derisive, but thankful, relieved, hopeful. The following morning, I deployed my best investigative team to plunge into the HOA's records. Every document, every complaint, every set of financials. We left no stone unturned. What we found? Much worse than I had thought. Not only had Veronica been enforcing community standards based on personal vendettas and bias, but she'd also been stealing HOA money for years. Bank statements did not deceive. Close to $75,000 in community fees had vanished into fancy vacations, kitchen overhauls, and a shiny new car she had brazenly called official HOA transportation. But the vehicle, it sat outside her lake house. A lake house financed, in some measure, by the same neighbors she terrorized into oppression. When the officers knocked on her door with an arrest warrant in hand, I made sure to be standing right there. I wanted to see her face the moment reality hit. And it did. The look of shock in her eyes when she saw me standing there beside the police. It's a look that I'll never forget. "This is harassment," she screamed as the cuffs clicked onto her wrists. "You're doing this because of that crippled little girl of yours." "No, Mrs. Miller," I replied, my tone even but unyielding. "This is occurring because you violated the law. Several laws, actually. Child endangerment, embezzlement, fraud, discrimination. And that's only the tip of the iceberg." As the officers led her down the driveway toward the waiting squad car, neighbors slowly emerged from their homes. Word had traveled fast. Some clapped quietly. Others simply watched in silence, witnessing the fall of a woman who had ruled over them with fear and arrogance for years. "You'll regret this," Veronica shouted over her shoulder as they closed the car door. "I have friends in high places. And my daughter," I said, "has friends in better places." The court fight dragged on for months, but even while it was happening, something wonderful began to take place in our community. With the shadow of Veronica's control lifted from everyone, the neighborhood started to breathe again. Lawns sprang to life with personality. Gardens flowered like never before. Laughter was back in the front yards as children felt brave enough to play outside once more. Encouraged by what had occurred, a neighborly group gathered to initiate a community development project centered on accessibility, inclusion, and compassion. And Lily, she became the focal point of it all. Those who previously passed us by would nary a glance now would pause to exchange greetings, render assistance, or merely smile. Strangers became friends. Our neighborhood, formerly sleek but impersonal, finally became a neighborhood to call home. Bored once more. Veronica didn't utter a word as the verdict was passed down. Her defiance shattered, her characteristic venom traded for stony incredulity. Lily grasped my hand as the bailiff took her away, and I gave it a gentle squeeze, pride welling up in my chest. When we emerged from the courthouse, there were a group of neighbors waiting for us. They applauded, not only for the verdict, but for Lily. Some carried signs that said, "We stand with Lily, and different is beautiful." Mrs. Chin presented Lily with a fresh new set of prosthetic covers. These had tiny stars and moons sparkling on them. Mr. Jenkins kneeled next to her and announced, "That playground we were discussing, it's waiting on you, Captain Lily." Lily smiled widely, her eyes shining. "Can it come with a spaceship too?" He chuckled. "You're in luck." At that moment, I understood that justice wasn't just about punishment. It was healing. It was taking back our space. Not a neighborhood per se, but a world that all too frequently forgets how to keep safe its most defenseless. We had gone to Oak Ridge Estates hoping for quiet streets and neatly trimmed lawns. What we discovered, through suffering and determination, was something much greater. Community. An honest one. And my daughter, my fierce, beautiful daughter with robot legs and a heart large enough to forgive the unforgivable. She did not merely get through it. She transformed it. "Thank you," said Lily brightly. "They let me fly." Janet smiled gently, tears welling up in her eyes. "Your mommy would be so proud of you." I looked at her for a moment and then nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me that," I said. "It means a lot more to me than you can imagine." Janet stood and gazed over the park, the sounds of giggling children through the newly accessible playground, the flowers planted by neighbors in color, and the rainbow chalk scribbles doodled lovingly across the sidewalk. "Used to despise this place, you know. Said it was phony, that people only pretended to care." I looked over at Lily, who was now confidently climbing on the play equipment with her friends. Perhaps she was right, at the time, but people change. Places change. Janet smiled sadly. because people like you brought it about. As I watched her turn and walk away, I experienced an odd sense of calm. The wounds Veronica had inflicted on Lily, on our neighborhood, wouldn't heal instantly, but heal they had begun to. And in healing, we had gained strength, together and as a community. Lily came dashing back to me, cheeks pink from exercise. "Daddy, may we plant some more flowers alongside the slide? I want it to be a rainbow." "You bet we can," I said, lifting her up in a hug. "We'll make it the most gorgeous rainbow this neighborhood ever saw." And we did, together. Is the legacy we did build, not a legacy of fear or conformity, but one of hope, resilience, and kindness. Lily's tale then grew into more than a story about defying cruelty. It was a statement about the force of one voice, one fearless child, and one strong mother.